Hello, welcome to Read Poorly by Tom the SCAPEGOAT. This is Tom the SCAPEGOAT, and today we'll be reading poorly The Art of Money Getting, or Golden Rules for Making Money by P.T. Barnum. This is a fucking great one. It was originally written in 1880 by that clown P.T. Barnum, half of Barnum and Bailey's Circus. This is going to be the best financial advice you'll ever receive from a clown. Let's begin reading this poorly. The inflection of all this that I'm about to do is going to suck because it's in a much different form of English than what I'm used to, so it's going to sound dumb. But enjoy the words. The Art of Money Getting. Page 1. In the United States, where we have more land than people, it is not at all difficult for persons in good health to make money. In this comparatively new field, there are so many avenues of success open, so many vocations which are not crowded, that any person of either sex who is willing, at least for the time being, to engage in any respectable occupation that offers, may find lucrative employment. Those who really desire to attain an independence have only to set their minds upon it and adopt the proper means, as they do in regard to any other object which they wish to accomplish, and the thing is easily done. But however easy it may be found to make money, I have no doubt many of my hearers will agree it is the most difficult thing in the world to keep it. The road to wealth is, as Dr. Franklin truly says, as plain as the road to the mill. It consists simply in expending less than we earn. That seems to be very simple. Mr. McGauber, one of those happy creations of the genial Dickens, put the case in a strong light when he says that to have an income of £20 per annum and spend £20 and 6 pence is to be the most miserable of men, whereas to have an income of only £20 and spend but £19 and 6 pence is to be the happiest of mortals. Many of my readers might say, we understand this is economy, and we know economy is wealth. We know we can't eat our cake and keep it also. Yet I beg to say perhaps that more cases of failure arise from mistakes on this point than almost any other. The fact is, many people think they understand economy when they really do not. True economy is misapprehended, and people go throughout life without properly comprehending what that principle is. One says, I have an income of so much, and here's my neighbor who has the same, yet every year he gets something ahead and I fall short. Why is it? It's probably because you think like a bitch. I added that part, don't worry about it. I know all about economy. He thinks he does, but he does not. There are many who think that economy consists in saving cheese parings and candle ends and cutting off 2 pence from the laundress bill and doing all sorts of little mean, dirty things. Economy is not meanness. The misfortune is also that this class of person let their economy apply in only one direction. They fancy they are so wonderfully economical in saving a half a penny where they ought to spend 2 pence that they think they can afford to squander in other directions. A few years ago, before kerosene oil was discovered or thought of, one might stop overnight at any of farmers' houses in the agricultural districts and get a very good supper. But after supper, he might attempt to read in the sitting room and would find it impossible with the insufficient light of one candle. The hostess, seeing his dilemma, would say, it is rather difficult to read here in evenings. The proverb says you must have a ship at sea in order to be able to burn 2 candles at once. We never have an extra candle except on extra occasions. These extra occasions occur perhaps twice a year. In this way, the good woman saves $5, $6, or $10 in that time, but the information which might be derived from having the extra light would, of course, far outweigh a ton of candles. The trouble does not end here. Feeling that she is so economical in tallow candles, she thinks she can afford to go frequently to the village and spend $20 or $30 for ribbons and furbelows, many of which are not necessary. This false economy may frequently be seen in men of business, and in those instances, it often runs to writing paper. You find good businessmen who save all the old envelopes and scraps and would not tear a new sheet of paper if they could avoid it for the world. This is all very well. They may in this way save $5 or $10 a year, but being so economical only in note paper, they think they can afford to waste time, to have expensive parties, and to drive their carriages. This is an illusion of Dr. Franklin's saving at the spigot and wasting at the bunghole. Penny wise and pound foolish. Punch, in speaking of his one idea, let me start that over, because punch is italicized, so meaning it's either a person or a thing. Punch, in speaking of this one idea class of people, says, they're like the man who bought a penny herring for his family's dinner, then hired a coach and four to take it home. I never knew a man to succeed by practicing this kind of economy. True economy consists in always making the income exceed the outgo. That's awesome. Wear the old clothes a little longer if necessary. Dispense with the new pair of gloves. Mend the old dress. Live on plainer food if need be, so that under all circumstances, unless some unforeseen accident occurs, there will be a margin in favor of the income. A penny here, a dollar there, placed at interest, goes on accumulating, and this way the desired result is attained. It requires some training, perhaps, to accomplish this economy, but once used to it, you will find there's more satisfaction in rational saving than in irrational spending. Here's a recipe which I recommend. I have found it to work an excellent cure for extravagance, and especially for mistaken economy. When you find that you have no surplus at the end of the year and yet have a good income, I advise you to take a few sheets of paper and form them into a book and mark down every item of expenditure. Post it every day or week in 2 columns, one headed necessaries or even comforts, and the other headed luxuries. And you will find that the latter column will be double, treble, and frequently 10 times greater than the former. The real comforts of life cost but a small portion of what most of us can earn. Dr. Franklin says it is the eyes of others and not our own eyes which ruin us. If all the world were blind except myself, I should not care for fine clothes or furniture. It is the fear of what Mrs. Grundy may say that keeps the noses of many worthy families in the grindstone. In America, many persons like to repeat, "We are all free and equal," but it is a great mistake in more senses than one. That we are born free and equal is a glorious truth in one sense, yet we are not all born equally rich, and we never shall be. One may say, there's a man who has an income of $50,000 per annum, while I have but $1,000. I knew that fellow when he was poor like myself. Now he's rich and thinks he's better than I am. What a bitch-minded motherfucker this guy's. I'll show him that I'm as good as he is. I'll go and buy a horse and buggy. No, I cannot do that, but I'll go and hire one and ride in this afternoon the same road that he does. Thus prove to him I am as good as he is. Fucking bitch-minded motherfuckers. I guess they've always existed. Oh, shit. Now I gotta cut that out. My friend, you do not need that trouble. You can easily prove that you are as good as he is. You have only to behave as well as he does. But you cannot make anybody believe that you are as rich as he is. Besides, you put on these airs and waste your time and spend your money, your poor wife will be obliged to scrub her fingers off at home and buy her tea 2 ounces at a time, and everything else in proportion, in order that you may keep up appearances, and after all deceive nobody. On the other hand, Mrs. Smith may say that her next-door neighbor married Johnson for his money, and everybody says so. She has a nice $1,000 camel's hair shawl, and she will make Smith get her an imitation one, and she will sit in a pew right next to her neighbor in church in order to prove that she is her equal. My good woman, you will not get ahead in this world if your vanity and envy thus take the lead. In this country, where we believe the majority ought to rule, we ignore that principle in regard to fashion, and let a handful of and let a handful of people calling themselves the aristocracy run up a false standard of perfection. And in endeavoring to rise to that standard, we constantly keep ourselves poor, all the time digging away for the sake of outside appearances. How much wiser to be a law unto ourselves and say, we will regulate our outgo by our income and lay up something for a rainy day. People ought to be as sensible on the subject of money getting as on any other subject. Like causes produce like effects. You cannot accumulate a fortune by taking the road that leads to poverty. It needs no prophet to tell us that those who live fully upon their means, without any thought of a reverse in this life, can ever attain pecuniary independence. And how much longer before the end of chapter 1? Because I have to do a few edits, because I'm cussing at how stupid people are. This isn't even the first chapter. I'm already upset with these people. Men and women accustomed to gratify every woman caprice will find it hard at first to cut down their various unnecessary expenses, and will feel it a great self-denial to live in a smaller house than they have been accustomed to, with less expensive furniture, less company, less costly clothing, fewer servants, a less number of balls, parties, theater goings, carriage ridings, pleasure excursions, cigar smokings, liquor drinkings, and other extravagances. But after all, if they will try the plan of laying by a nest egg, in quotations, or in other words, a small sum of money, at least at interest or judiciously invested in land, they will be surprised at the pleasure to be derived from constantly adding to their little pile, as well as form all economical habits which are engendered by this course. The old suit of clothes and the old bonnet and dress will answer for another season. The Croton or spring water will taste better than champagne. A cold bath and a brisk walk will prove more exhilarating than a ride of the finest coach. A social chat, an evening's reading in the family circle, or an hour's play of Hunt the Slipper and Blind Man's Buff will be far more pleasant than a $50 or $500 party, when the reflection of the difference in the cost is indulged in by those who begin to know the pleasures of saving. Thousands of men are kept poor, and tens of thousands are made so after they have acquired quite sufficient to support them well through life, in consequence of laying their plans of living on too broad a platform. Some families expend $20,000 per annum, and some much more, and would scarcely know how to live on less, while others secure more solid enjoyment frequently on a 20th part of that amount. Prosperity is a more severe ordeal than adversity, especially sudden prosperity. Easy come, easy go is an old and true proverb. A spirit of pride and vanity, when permitted to have full sway, is underlying cankerworm, which is an underlying... Let me start that whole sentence over. A spirit of pride and vanity, when permitted to have full sway, is the underlying cankerworm which gnaws the very vitals of a man's worldly possessions, let them be small or great, hundreds or millions. Many persons, as they begin to prosper, immediately expand their ideas and commence expanding for luxuries, until in short time their expenses swallow up their income, and they become ruined in their ridiculous attempts to keep up appearances and to make a sensation. I know a gentleman of fortune who says that when he first began to prosper, his wife would have a new and elegant sofa. That sofa, he says, cost me $30,000. When the sofa reached the house, it was found necessary to get chairs to match, then sideboards, carpets, and tables to correspond with them, and so on through the entire stock of furniture, when at last it was found that the house itself was quite too small and old-fashioned for the furniture, and then a new one was built to correspond with the new purchases. Thus, added my friend, summing up an outlay of $30,000 caused by that single sofa, and saddling on me in the shape of servants, equipage, and the necessary expenses attended upon keeping up a fine establishment, a yearly outlay of $11,000 and a tight pinch at that. Whereas 10 years ago we lived with much more real comfort, because with much less care on as many hundreds.